Hi everybody, my name is Lamar. Welcome to my channel. This is Lamar's Library, where I get to talk about the books that I'm reading and share my thoughts and opinions. If you're new here, welcome. If you're familiar with me and my channel, which probably not, this is my second video, welcome back. Yeah, so I have these library books here. I actually took out 4, but I'm gonna only talk about 3. 4 in 3 weeks is a little too much for me, but I think 3 is like a good number, so I'm just gonna try to stick with that and push myself to stay consistent with that. But yeah, so without further ado, let's get started. So I have 1 short fiction book and 1 short fiction book, 1 fiction book, and 1 non-fiction book. So I'll review it in the order of which I guess I kind of read it. Let me know if I'm going too fast. I think I might be going a little too fast. So this one is the non-fiction book, The Language of Butterflies by Wendy Williams, not the radio host. There's some white lady, their dog. I'm sure you can see that. Yeah, so this one says how thieves, hoarders, scientists, and other obsessives unlock the secret of the world's favorite insect. And this book was the first one that I was actually starting to read and out of this bundle. And it was good, actually. You know, I like nonfiction books. I appreciate nonfiction books. It's a break from the constant, I guess, run-of-the-mill imagination of fiction books and the type of books that I usually like. So I like this one. I appreciated the research behind it. I appreciated butterflies are one of my favorite insects, as you can see. Yeah, I appreciated this book. I learned a lot. I'm a really big fan of, honestly, biology, and I'm a big fan of learning how ecosystems are intricately tied together and how, I guess, pollinators play a big role in that, but more specifically, honestly, any animal and like the food chain and like different things like that. I'm interested in biology a lot, so this was definitely a good read. I actually took some notes from this one too. Oh, this is a random coin. And so if there's any noise in the background, it's probably from my dogs, so I apologize. Yeah, so I took lots of notes. Yeah, it was interesting. Let's see what I wrote. I learned a lot about, like, so people usually think like the butterfly has like the tongue type of thing that comes out, and they think it's just kind of like a dog in the way it operates, but it's more so like a sponge, and it's like the proboscis. That's what it's called. And yeah, so like a lot of different things I've learned. Honestly, I appreciated it. They talk about how like the language of butterfly is essentially the language of colors and light, and the color blue is like a very rare color to appear in the natural world. And so our eyes have cones and rods, if you didn't know, and which probably knew that. So yeah, cones is for, I'm pretty sure, the different colors, and the rods are for like the shades. Don't quote me, but it's basically we're more susceptible to picking up the reds and the greens. But when the blue comes up, it's like a certain, especially for like on a butterfly wing, it's like the certain level of light, a certain wavelength of light is like isolated, and it only allocates and reflects back the blue color. Basically, it's based on the scale of the butterfly wings. When on a microscopic level, it's like a Christmas tree, each scale. But then if you go even further deeper into that, then it's like essentially it's like a prism of light shining through. So it's just like how a prism can shine the white light through and then create like a rainbow on the other side. It's kind of like similar with, it's like the gyroid that neutralizes all but one special hue. Yeah, that's one thing. I learned a lot of things. I like this book. I'm just kind of rambling here. Artistic philosophy of butterflies. If hiding doesn't work, try in your face ostentatiousness. So like butterflies, like in nature and stuff, the louder the color is, the louder the design or the pattern is, more of like a warning. That's just how kind of biology works. It's interesting. It's a very vivid. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the migration. I learned a lot about the different genders of butterflies. I learned about the internal navigation compass. They can kind of tell like when the weather is changing, and then that's what can influence the migratory patterns and whatnot. And they're very crucial for the ecosystem. So yeah, that was a really good book. I'm not gonna go through all the notes I took, honestly, but I had like 4 pages of notes. So yeah, that was a good book. I don't know, what would I rate this book? Honestly, I'd give it, this is the first type of book that I've read like this, but just from the cover alone, honestly, I'd give it like a 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. I think what would have given it a 10 out of 10 for me, personally, I'm a huge fan of like mythology and learning about the different indigenous wisdoms of different peoples around the world and different tribal wisdoms of peoples around the world. So if it kind of incorporated a little bit of that, I feel like that would have just been like the icing on the cake. And like, because it talks about the history, it talks about the present, and it talks about the future of like the studying of butterflies and like the humans' fascination with butterflies and stuff. And people did a lot of things, like the biggest like heist, one of the biggest heists was like of butterflies and whatnot. My cat just walking. Yeah, so this was a good book, honestly. Kind of flew through it because I was more reading it. When I'm reading different books, it's like a different type of, I guess, mindset that you have to kind of switch into. So this was a nonfiction book, and I was reading it to absorb the most information out of it. So that's why I have my commonplace book for things like that. So yeah, this was a good book. I'd recommend this for sure if you're interested in the study of Lepidoptera. Don't quote me. Yeah. So moving on. Next book that I was also kind of simultaneously reading. This one is called Falling in Love with Hominids by the lovely World Fantasy Award winner Nalo Hopkinson, which is one of my favorite authors. This one, honestly, it was a pretty good read. I like how every story, again, short stories collection, so every story was a different story. But more so this one than the last short story collection I've read, which was Frying Plantain. That one was more like kind of chronological, and this one is very much unrelated stories. But yeah, I think this one had like 20 something stories. Let me see what my favorite ones were. Spoiler free, of course. I liked The East Hound. That one was pretty good. That was the first one. I liked Emily Breakfast. That one was good. I liked Old Habits. Left Foot, Right Foot. Left Foot, Right. I liked Shift. I liked Delicious Monster. There was one that was really good too. Blushing was pretty good. Snow Day, Flying Lessons, Shift, Soul Case was good too. Yeah, so they had a lot of good ones, honestly. And at the beginning of each, there's like a little passage. I'm not sure you can see that little passage about like what inspired the story, and it's interesting to read. Old Habits was a really good one. That one was like about like ghosts and stuff. So this one has a lot of course, like fantasy elements, and I love how she incorporates Caribbean mythology and language and culture. She infuses it into a lot of her stories, which is something that I directly draw a lot of inspiration from as I continue on with my passion for reading and writing. So yeah, this was a really good book. Honestly, I never read it before, but I think this was the most recent book that she released prior to the one that came out last year. So I'd give this book a 10 out of 10. I'd just give this book a 10 out of 10. Shout out to Nala Hopkinson. Yeah. She's Canadian. And honestly, her imagination is just, and her prose is just very like tasteful, very masterful. So it makes sense that she kind of went through with taking like a couple years to make this, because it's like a accumulation of like different stories from different years, I'm assuming. So it's just, yeah, this was a good book. I also love the hair on the cover of the black person. I like that. Shout out to that. So I'd give that a 10 out of 10. I think you guys should check this one out if you haven't already. Okay, moving on. This is the final book that I read. This one I've been meaning to read since I was in high school, honestly. But I never really got around to it, because this is one of the only fiction books that have Barbados as like a center point. I have mixed feelings on this one. This one's called The Star Side of Bird Hill by Naomi Jackson. Yeah, so this one's just a regular fiction book, nothing crazy, but I'll tell you what I really appreciated about this book. I really appreciated that this book had a rare insight into, honestly, like mental illness in the Caribbean community and how Caribbean people deal with it, but also how like kind of like moving to North America from the Caribbean is not always going to reap what you initially intended, and how like the dream of, I guess, moving to these places for a better life, like it's achievable, but at the same time it's not always like what you intended it. So for this one, it follows two girls, two sisters and their mother. They the older sister was born in Barbados, the mother was born in Barbados, but then the younger sister was born in New York. They moved to New York, and the mother worked with people with HIV and like AIDS during the epidemic, and she was, I think she was a nurse or something, but the job actually took a very heavy toll on her and made her extremely depressed. I think she might have had some other issues too, but she was depressed to the point where she couldn't like get out of bed and stuff and take care of her kids. So the older sister kind of had to step into that role and take care of her younger sister, make sure they had some food to eat, they had to clothes to wear and things like that, especially as their bodies are changing and growing into like adult forms through puberty. But yeah, until one day the mother just like lost like a friend or something, and she just snapped at the children, and she kind of like decided she wanted to send them away to Barbados with their grandmother, the mother's mother. Her name is Hyacinth, and I think she's one of my favorite characters in this book. But yeah, this book, it was interesting to see the narrative about the intersection of Caribbean people and mental health and mental illness and stuff, because I feel like that topic is very taboo and not enough talked about, especially alongside queer culture and LGBTQ kind of topics and themes, in terms of like the Caribbean's culture's perspectives on that, and as well as like how the mother was kind of an outlier and the grandmother and stuff, and even the young daughter. But it talks a lot about the different complexities of what motherhood and childhood kind of bring, and it was an interesting book. I appreciated this book, but the one thing that I have to bring up, I guess, honestly, like, I feel like the ending was a little rushed. I feel like it was kind of strung together. I feel like there wasn't a proper like tying up of loose ends, and I feel like it kind of like aimlessly ended in a way. But I appreciate the representation. I appreciate this book for what it was, and it came out a couple years ago, so I know it definitely had its impact on people, and it does definitely talk about like the healing and the trauma, I guess, that comes through generational means, and how we're left to our own devices to kind of deal with that and pick up the pieces that our parents kind of lay for us. We're a product of our own environment, or it's nature and nurture, but at the same time we have the power to kind of forge forward and shape our own destinies. So I feel like people also, when they show you who they are for the first time, like, believe them, and like if you feel like in your heart of hearts something is right for you, and then like, go for it. I feel like the best character in this book though was the youngest sister, and she had the most, I guess, kind of like raw emotional fortitude. Okay, I gotta wrap this up soon. The puppy was puppying. But yeah, overall I give this book honestly like an 8 out of 10, just for Bayesian culture, just for putting Barbados on the map. 8 out of 10, pretty good. Read it if you want. I think it's pretty good. So yeah, and I'll show you guys the book that I didn't. This was the most recent Nella Hopkinson book. I just felt like I needed like a new kind of, not muse per se, but like a new author to kind of interested. I've read like back-to-back Nella Hopkinson. I feel like the next book I might read is like a Marlon James book or something, because I like the fantasy elements of that. But yeah, this was the book that I was gonna read, but I didn't really get to. I trying to try starting, but honestly, like, with the book that I'm kind of formulating and this book, it's like they're not similar at all, but I just feel like this needs to be saved until another time. I just feel it wasn't the right time for this book, but I've heard good things and I'm very excited to read this one day. But I'm probably gonna read some other things. Also, like, guys, like, I was trying to read like a Neil Gaiman book, but the stuff just came out about like him essaying like people and things like that, and I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna read a Neil Gaiman book anymore. But maybe I'm thinking like my next books may be like Toni Morrison, like James Baldwin, Notes of a Native Son, like Toni Morrison more so like her like source of self-regard, like something like that. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. But I gotta go, guys, because this dog did a business on the floor. I gotta clean it up because it's hard to smell it. But yeah, I guess that's the end of my review. I'm still getting used to this YouTube thing. Let me know if you have any book recommendations, if anybody even sees this. If not, that's okay. Thank you for watching. Yeah, until next time, I guess. Take care. Peace.